how does the model work? What is Table Grace Cafe?
Well, first and foremost, we're a restaurant for everyone. And I always start by telling new people that if you forget everything else I say about Table Grace, remember that Table Grace Cafe is a restaurant for you, no matter who you are, whether you have a few pennies in your pocket or whether you have millions of dollars. It's a cafe for everyone.
Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and my guests today aren't just passionate about serving great plates of food, though they definitely do that. They are really all about ensuring that everyone who enters their cafe can enjoy a meal, whether they have the means to pay for it or not. But it's not about just giving people food. You guys will also want to empower those who enter your restaurant. So we got to talk today about Table Grace Cafe, and to do that, Matt and Simone Weber are my guests. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here with you.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here.
It is a blessing to have you guys on. Ever since I learned about your mission and heard this story, I was just like, they gotta be on the podcast. This is too good. More people need to hear about this. So let's start there, because I think a lot of people listening to this might be unfamiliar, or maybe they have some idea of what Table Grace Cafe is but aren't intimately familiar with it. How does the model work? What is Table Grace Cafe?
Well, first and foremost, we're a restaurant for everyone. And I always start by telling new people that if you forget everything else I say about Table Grace, remember that Table Grace Cafe is a restaurant for you, no matter who you are, whether you have a few pennies in your pocket or whether you have millions of dollars. It's a cafe for everyone, and we want everyone to participate. What's unique about us is most of our menu items don't have prices, and the reason we do that is so that we can serve everyone. And we were sharing our story with some people for the first time recently and referring to the idea of something being foolish. And probably in 2011, when we opened a cafe in downtown Omaha with no prices on the menu at the time, most people would say that was probably a foolish idea. Thankfully, because of the support of the community, we're still in operation 15 years later this spring.
And what is the mission of the cafe?
Our mission is nourishing hungry bodies and souls through music. And so music is actually what kind of sparked our creative brains to dream big all those years ago in 2008, to put our gifts and talents together and start an organization where we could do a local hunger outreach. That's the nourishing the hungry body part, and also utilize music as a vehicle to communicate about how we're helping to transform lives through the cafe and the other aspects of what we do with our outreach, and engaging people in participating in that through our concerts and worship events and other ways that we engage with music in the community, like Table Grace, the musical.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about the musical later, but we can go there right now. How do music and the cafe intertwine? Because that's something that's very unique. Most restaurants, maybe they have music playing in the background. Some might have live music, on specific occasions or whatever. But at Table Grace, it's really intertwined in the DNA. How does that work?
It's part of everything that we do. So I'm a singer-songwriter, worship leader. Matt is also a musician. Our daughters are musicians. And so we have, over the years, done a lot of our fundraising by taking our mission out into different locations and sharing original music that we have written to engage people in what the mission is all about. We also have pop-up music days, Music with a Mission, at the cafe once or twice a month, usually on a Thursday, where we and other folks who come in that day can share music, a gift or a talent. If somebody plays a drum or a guitar, they can jump up and donate that way by sharing their song for their meal that day. We also have, well, like I mentioned, over the last 10 years, 11 years now, drawn inspiration through people who have found transformation through the mission of Table Grace to create characters for Table Grace the musical. And the musical is fictional, but it's loosely based on all of who we are and what we do and how we impact the community. And that musical was able to be on stage last summer 7 times in 3 different theaters. And we're talking about taking it on the road at some point. We've got a documentary of the making of the musical coming out. And so music is a way that not only do we engage people in utilizing their gifts and talents to contribute to the community through the music, but it's also a way that we can continue to amplify the mission and the message and connect like heart to heart with people. Because if you're at the cafe, there might be days when there's a lot of different types of people sitting in the space of the cafe. But on our music days, if we start playing a song that folks recognize, oftentimes the community will turn toward each other because there's something common that just happened there. And it opens us up to more of that unity that's within our community. I don't know. Do you want to add?
Yeah, that sounds like unity in our community. That sounds like it could be in a song too.
Well, I think it is.
Oh, okay. Is that in the musical?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Community and us. Yeah.
But no, like Simone said, the music is really a vehicle to communicate about what we do and our mission of nourishing hungry bodies and souls at Table Grace Cafe. And nourishing the body, that's the most obvious part, feeding people, making sure that people have access to high quality, healthy food in an environment of hospitality and healthy environment for everybody. And then nourishing the soul comes with the community. We say that we're providing a hand up for people instead of just a handout. Obviously, it's a charitable endeavor. We have customers that range anywhere from people that are homeless sleeping on the street to, like I said, a suit and tie that works across the street. And so the idea is that people of all walks of life come together and contribute in their own way. And we believe that every person that walks through our door has something to offer. So when people walk into Table Grace, instead of saying, "Welcome, can I take your order?" we say, "Welcome to Table Grace. Would you like to volunteer or donate today?" And so people have the chance to give, even if they don't have any money at all. And the reason we do that is because it actually provides empowerment for people. If you listen to the stories of some of the people that have come through and have given the chance to contribute in that way, they really value that because it makes them feel like they earned it. And that's an empowering feeling for people who may not be able to earn things in any other way in the community because of how our society is set up. So that empowerment is one thing. The other thing is just building relationships. And we believe that healthy giving is based on a relationship that we have with someone. If you're driving around Omaha and you see someone holding a sign up and you decide to give them money, that's great. That's a generous act. At Table Grace, but then you drive away and you don't really know what happens after that. At Table Grace, when we welcome people and we say, "Welcome to Table Grace, would you like to volunteer or donate today?" and they decide to come and volunteer their time, they might help us wash dishes, they might help us even peel some potatoes or something like that. And then over time, maybe even as soon as that day, we get to know them a little bit, get to know their name, maybe get to know their story a little bit. And then once people get to start to know each other, they can start to share resources. And that's not just food, but it's information. It's, "Hey, where can I go to get this support or this help or that help?" And for some of these folks, it's the first time in forever that someone really looked them in the eye, called them by their name, and valued them for something that they're doing at that moment. So those are the ways that we're trying to build a stronger community in Omaha.
So if anybody's listening to this and they either want to volunteer or donate or just come in and get a meal, Table Grace is located at 16th and Farnham. You guys are right next to Block 16.
Yep.
Pretty well-known, established place. Obviously, in your cafe, you led off this podcast by saying Table Grace Cafe, regardless of who you are, is for you. So you get a lot of people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different upbringings. How have you seen community form amongst all these different people who may never interact outside of the opportunity to do so by meeting inside your cafe?
I think I'll talk from the side of the community that is more the folks who are coming to pay it forward to others. I think that one of the things that Table Grace offers people who might have kind of a void in their lives, they think, I've established my life. I know what I'm doing with my work. Everything is going pretty well, but there's still some sort of emptiness where they're kind of disconnected from what does it all mean. I've heard a number of stories over the years of people that come into Table Grace and they sense this deep connection with the bigger meaning of life, and like sitting next to folks who are experiencing homelessness or that are of a different background or culture or faith, non-faith, like just gathering in a space where there's all different walks of life in the community and not having those silos that we're going to every day kind of levels the playing field for everyone. And oftentimes people are just like, wow, like I don't even know how to explain it, but something really meaningful and deep and rich happened here today. And, they might have conversations with other folks who are sitting there with their belongings in a garbage bag, or that maybe haven't showered for a few days. You know what I mean? Like these are people that are on the streets or in the shelters. And like Matt said, maybe some people that haven't been looked in the eye, haven't been greeted, haven't been asked like, how's your life going? And so I feel like it can definitely go both ways. It's like the people who are coming in thinking that they've got something to give often are filled in an enriching way that maybe they didn't even anticipate. And then the folks who are coming in need of, to volunteer for their meal, like Matt said, there's this dignity that they feel treated with, and that we're all in this together because we're hungry, right? Like
everybody's got to eat.
Everybody's got to eat. And so that's our common gathering spot. That's where we start. And that's where we continue too, is that, we come back again and again, and we need to be nourished with healthy food, and we all can participate in that together.
A minute ago, Simone, you used the word silos. And I found that interesting because I found a quote from you previously that mentioned silos that I wanted to ask you about. You said, "We've been to Tanzania, Juarez, the Dominican Republic, and every time we'd come back from one of these missions, we were filled with the sense that something was missing. There's a level of hospitality you experience in these other countries where people have next to nothing. We felt a stark difference of what it meant to be hospitable and in community with one another. We were moved by how those communities came together. Back in Omaha, it felt siloed." Can you unpack that? What do you mean when you said that?
Well, I think that, our culture is set up in a way where once you choose a place of work, like let's say that you work in one of the buildings downtown, there's a parking garage. You can park your car. You can go up the elevator, walk through the hallway, and go to your office and stay in your little area. You wouldn't necessarily have to step foot outside and see the community, the people who are struggling, the diversity. That's one example. Another example is, I've grown up in the church, and I mean, as much as we in the church are welcoming and trying to attempt to bring people to the churches and everything, they tend to be silos as well, because in some cases, the folks who we're interacting with now in, the wider community may or may not ever feel comfortable driving to one of those churches, crossing the threshold of the door, because maybe they don't have the same language. Maybe they didn't grow up in the same setting. And so I think having shared experiences creates those silos. Like it makes the people that know what's going on feel very comfortable. And it makes the people that don't know what's going on feel very uncomfortable. And so having a space where, like in those other countries when we went to do that mission work years ago, I think one of the things that was so compelling about those experiences was the thought that these folks who had nearly nothing were just so incredibly welcoming. It was like we were their long lost relatives, coming to stay in their home. Like they would move out of their rooms for us. They would, shower us with all, and so it was just like this ultra sense of hospitality. And then the whole town would move with you from like location to location and, have these experiences. And I think that, it gave us a sense of what it means to extend that family hospitality beyond our own people, beyond our own comfortable family or even the extended family or maybe people that we work with or that we identify with. Like let's break down those barriers and let's extend that hospitality to all people and kind of go with that sense of radical hospitality where we go above and beyond, regardless of if anybody can ultimately return the favor, like that it's a give and bless and release sort of concept.
And you can do it with joy, because that's the other thing we noticed when we visited those places was how happy people were, even though they had next to nothing. And that's proof that you can be joyfully hospitable and welcoming and giving, even if you have next to nothing. So, that's part of what inspired us to have the courage to start this cafe in the beginning when we had not much money in the bank to start a cafe. We did a soft opening. We didn't do a lot of advertising at the time. It was just social media and without prices. And we got secondhand everything to start the cafe up and didn't even have prices. And, it was experiencing that type of hospitality that kind of gave us the courage to say, we can do this and our community really needs it. Because no matter who you are, you have something to offer, you have something to give. And when we all can do that and share it, makes the community a better place. So,
what are the responses that you guys see from people, especially the less fortunate? Because, kind of like you mentioned, so many people that work downtown usually aren't interacting with those people. It's they're walking by, maybe head down, anything like that. It may be somebody's, giving them a couple bucks or something, but they're not usually stopping to have a conversation. To have a cafe where they can not only go in and get a meal, but they can have people who say, no, you know what? We would love for you to come be a part of our team. We're having a music event, a music brunch this coming Sunday. We'd love for you to come back and experience that or maybe even be a part of it. What are some of the reactions and conversations that you've had with people? Maybe how have you seen them respond to hospitality that they're not used to getting?
Well, I'll use an example from our Gospel Brunch last month. So we started this new thing in January on the second Sundays where we're opening on Sundays once a month. And we have wonderful food, music, prayer, just a variety of opportunities for people to plug in and be a part of. And at our first one, there was a family that came from the Lydia house, and they had, 6 kids, and then the mom and the dad. And they said on their way in that they had been wanting to come to Table Grace, but it just hadn't worked out quite yet. And they weren't sure if other establishments, whether that was church or restaurants, would be able to handle their crew, because it was a lot of kids under a certain age, like 10 or something. And so they were very busy and, ready to have lunch and all of that. But they came and they enjoyed the hospitality. They had their meal. The kids got to get involved in the music. And we even had a team that made cards, and we went and delivered them to the Lydia house for this family. And, they said a lot of times if they're going to show up somewhere, they're going to end up late or in the middle of like a service or a time when they don't feel like they should walk in the doors at that point, but they just felt super welcomed and showered with, blessings and super grateful. They were like, this is incredible. This is amazing. You guys really made us feel like a part of everything today. So that's a recent example. I don't know.
Yeah. I like to see the suit and tie come in that maybe didn't know what they were walking into. And The homeless person sitting there that's a regular and we know their name and they're comfortable in our environment, extending hospitality on our behalf and thanking someone. A suit and tie comes in, maybe they order a latte and they give a $20 donation on top of that or something like that. And the person, the homeless person sitting there will say thank you on behalf of the community. And again, that's just, it's an interaction that wouldn't just happen out on the street necessarily. It's completely different because that person has buy-in because they know that this person who just gave that $20 donation is helping sustain something for the whole community and enabling them to come back again tomorrow and have another great meal with us. So,
oh, I know that you guys were really excited about the Sunday brunches because that was all over your social media in about the month leading up. As I was going back and doing research, I kept seeing stuff about it, and I was like, man, they were all about this gospel brunch. Now that you've had one under your belt, you told a little bit of the story there, Simone, but what was that experience like? Did it live up to what you hoped it would?
I think it exceeded our hopes. You never know when you start something new, even though we've been at this for a while in different ways and stuff. But, it's a different day. We don't know who's going to come, like just all of that. And I think it kind of blew my mind anyway. We did 4 sets of music over the course of those 4 hours. So we had, our band, which is Matt and I, and the first couple hours, our daughter Hope was playing violin and singing with us, and then our drummer. And then the second couple of hours, she had to go to a rehearsal, so one of our other friends came and played bass with us and sang. So musically speaking, it was a lot of music to prepare for 4 sets of, just kind of ongoing. And we took breaks and interacted and with people and had snacks and things like that. But we also did a live stream for the first hour. And it was kind of wild. This sometimes happens in Table Grace. It's like the exact thing that's supposed to be happening happens at that moment. So like it wasn't as busy that first hour, so we could kind of focus on the live stream. And then the minute I shut the camera off, it was like the doors just opened wide and like everybody came piling in. It was like somehow they knew that we were just getting done with like our live stream. And then it was kind of like beautiful chaos, I would say, for the next, just like there were people eating, talking. We were having some more of that prayer and worship kind of time together. And then, the third and fourth hours, I feel like some of the folks hung around and there was another like turnover of people. And I don't know, the food was amazing. Fellowship was excellent. We had people that were coming in off the streets, people that wouldn't have otherwise gone to church somewhere. And then we had the crowd that showed up after church that they went somewhere else and then they came for their lunch there on that day as well. So it was a great mix of different people and we're excited to keep going with it. And I think in March, we are planning to have guest musicians because the second Sunday in March will be 2 days after our annual gala fundraiser. And so Matt and I will have spent a lot of our energy on that Friday night, March 6th. And by the way, if anybody's listening, you can go to tablegracecafe.com and click on the gala link to find out more information about how to attend that as well, because we'd love for everyone to be there. So anyway, we're going to have different feature musicians and visiting leaders and things like that. So it's another way to lift up the musicians in our community, to gather around music and food. I don't know. Do you want to add anything about the Gospel Brunch and your experience?
Yeah, we were just really happy with the attendance because it's the first time we had done it. And hearing you say that you saw it all over social media, that's encouraging. So I guess we did our job in promoting it. But still, you never know when you do something new like that, how it's going to be received. But if you've never been to Table Grace, you might not know that it only has like 26 seats. And we served over 60 people that day in 4 hours. So that's a pretty good turnover rate for our dining room to serve that many people for our first gospel brunch. And probably my favorite thing on the menu that day was a persimmon brie tart with honey and pistachios that our sous chef Greg put together, and with a handmade from scratch pastry. So that was like the highlight of the menu for me, and we just kind of use what we have, whatever's donated to us, and we happen to have persimmons and brie donated that week, so that's what we made.
You guys could be like professional seguers, because this is like the third or fourth time where you've said something that led into a question that I wanted to ask.
That's wild.
You mentioned the menu. Obviously, Table Grace is about so much more than food, but this is a food podcast, and we're half an hour in and haven't really talked very much about food yet. Your menu mostly consists of pizza, salads, and soups,
Yep.
although you also have rotating specials. How did you, as you were conceptualizing the menu and saying, okay, what can we consistently offer that is going to draw the public in and create this community that we want to, how did you say this is what we want the menu to be?
So it was a journey, kind of literally, because before we opened the cafe, we were just actually doing this personal chef service out of a church kitchen here in Omaha. That was the first program we did as a nonprofit. And some college kids came to volunteer one summer, and one of them had been to a restaurant in Denver over spring break called Same Cafe. And Same stands for So All May Eat. And that was the first time I had heard of a restaurant without prices. So I took a journey to Denver to visit Same Cafe right away. As soon as I heard about it, I was like booking a flight and going out there, and worked with them in their kitchen for about a week. And at that time, they had been open at least 4 or 5 years. So to me, that seemed like a proven model for this community cafe concept. And their menu is pizza, salad, and soup. And it seemed to work for them. And, you know, when you think about it, you can be really creative with pizza toppers. All you got to have is a crust, and then, you know, it's a blank canvas. You do whatever you want with it, kind of. Same thing with the salad. You got a bowl of lettuce, get creative, put whatever you want with it. And then soups, same thing. You know, just you can use so many different types of ingredients to make a soup. And so knowing that we're going to be working with donated food, and you don't have a reliable set inventory that's going to rotate all the time, you can still have a menu that stays consistent. The framework of the menu can stay consistent, and you can get creative. So that's how we came up with pizza, salad, and soup. And that was the way it was until we opened for breakfast. How long ago? I don't remember now how long it's been, but
Couple years.
Maybe and now
3.
we do breakfast too. So we have a similar framework for breakfast. We always have a breakfast sandwich because we have a relationship with Panera, and they donate bread every week, so we can use that for breakfast sandwiches. And then we always have those, and then a special to go with it, whether that's a breakfast casserole or some other side, and then pastries and fruit and bagels and all kinds of other things. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Let's get into the backstory of all this. How did you guys meet originally?
We met at a music camp in Lincoln when we were in high school. So I had just, sort of thought, I want to go to a music camp. Grew up in Axtell, and so I went to my choir teacher and said, hey, what's going on in Nebraska that I can go to as a vocalist? And she found the one at UNL, and so I applied to be in the vocal jazz program there. And Matt was in the band, trumpet.
Trumpet, yep.
So it was the summer after our junior year in high school, and we met the first day of the camp, and the rest, as they say, is history. Yeah, we dated long distance. Matt grew up in Dorchester. I grew up in Axtell, so we were a couple hours apart. And we went to as many honor bands and choirs as we could our senior year so that we could stay connected. And then we both ended up at UNL for our undergraduate as well.
And then afterwards, excuse me, you guys moved to New York City to pursue Simone's music career. And Matt, that was when you got involved in the culinary world.
Yeah.
What gave you that push to get interested in food there?
Yeah. Well, I'd always been interested in food. I grew up in a farming community, and my dad worked for his cousins on the family farm, and I would cook lunches for him when he'd come home during the summer for his lunch break, and spent a lot of time in my grandma's kitchen. And I just have fond memories of big family dinners and my grandma's baking and all of that growing up, church potlucks, all that good stuff. So just grew up around lots of fun family food festivities, and liked to cook, enjoyed cooking, did all the cooking for us in our marriage to start with. And but before we moved to New York, I had kind of a good career job in Lincoln raising money for nonprofits. So in Lincoln during our college days was actually when I got my feet wet in the nonprofit world for a company that raised money for all kinds of different nonprofits. And I was pretty comfortable in that job. But when Simone said she wanted to move to New York, I thought, well, that sounds pretty big. It sounds like you really want to do this, and we're married. So if you're going to do it, I should probably go with you. And I kind of had to look at my life over again because that company didn't exist where we were going, and I was like, okay, asking myself again, what do I want to be when I grow up? And restaurant capital of the world, some people say, New York City. So I thought, well, why not go to chef school? That sounds fun. Sounds like it could be pretty cool. So I started looking around, and because of what I was doing in my job, I was interested in like vegan, vegetarian, health supportive cooking. And so I found this small chef program called the Natural Gourmet Institute for Food and Healing. It was just a 9-month certificate program, and I was in and out of there, but it was like one of the funnest times of my life, just being in that classroom and learning all these different things, and then doing my stage and my internship at different places. I got to be at the James Beard House with the chef from Las Vegas to do a fancy dinner there, and I got to be at Aquavit, and one night I got to stand right next to Marcus Samuelson on the line, and so that was definitely a highlight. And then I worked at a vegan restaurant there called Candle 79 for about a year, and had all kinds of famous patrons come through there, like David Hyde Pierce, Uma Thurman, George Carlin was a customer at one point. So got to know kind of like who was vegan, who you didn't really know was vegan because they ate at Candle 79. So that was a fun time, and yeah, definitely a formative chapter of our lives.
How did you guys decide to come back to Nebraska and eventually land up in Omaha?
Kind of like we've decided a lot of things in our life. We feel led. So like we had kind of caught this vision that we didn't, I had received some training and opportunities in my music in New York City, and got to connect with people over songwriting and just kind of experience the things I went there to experience. And at one point, we kind of had a set of 3 things happen, which gave us the confidence that we were being led, that we didn't really need to stay in New York City to do what we feel was going to be our calling in life. And so, and we got this clear picture that we were supposed to come back to Nebraska, our home area, and do something with our gifts and talents, with culinary and music. We didn't quite know what yet. So in the same way that we moved out there by like selling much of what we owned, storing the rest, and subletting from somebody, we kind of moved back the same way. We just were like, okay, it's time to go. And we moved back in with Matt's folks in their basement, and then, we're able to find jobs from that vantage point and kind of go from there. So it really was, I don't know, depending on who's listening, you might know what I'm talking about, but I feel like when different things shift in our lives and we're able to listen kind of where, in our case, where we felt God was leading us, things start to affirm those decisions, and we, follow the breadcrumbs. But some of the other people we've read over the years, like Dan Millman, and were there any other books that you feel like were early on influential? But it's like
maybe Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle. Kind of trust the process and lean into your gifts and talents. Figure out where your gifts and talents intersect with the world's needs, and that's kind of like, for us, the highest calling is where we can live into our gifts and that meets a need in our community.
I mean, just knowing tiny portions of you guys' stories. I mean, there are already, we've talked about several like big inflection points where most people would be paralyzed by fear and not have the the courage, the faith, the whatever it is to make that move. Looking at you, I would either say you guys are just incredibly impulsive, or you are people of great faith. And I think it's much more so the latter. I don't think that you do things impulsively. I think that you think them through, and like you said, trust the process and also trust God. But as you make big move after big move, what gives you that faith? Because I mean, like my wife and I, we're believers, but if I went to Sarah tonight and was like, hey, I want to move to New York to start my podcasting career, she'd look at me like I had three heads and be like, what are you talking about? We're not doing that. What gives you guys the courage and the faith to make those big moves like that?
I don't know. I feel like, I think some of it has to do with, like, I've always been a dreamer. So as a kid, I dreamt big. And I think that we met at a time when I was still kind of in the height of that, where like anything is possible and we can do anything, you know, let's shoot for the moon and maybe we'll land in the stars kind of thing. And so part of that energy has propelled me. And I definitely feel like we both sense that there's a deep meaning for anyone to exist, you know, and that there's like a depth of awareness of what is this life really for and what is it about. And if we're not living into what matters most, like, then what are we here for, kind of thing. And so continuing to just sort of, and even though I'm a dreamer, I feel like Matt's the risk taker in some fashion. And so like, we kind of balance each other out in different ways. You know, we're constantly like, let's do this, let's try that. No, let's not. You know, I'll give you an example. We climbed Mount Kilimanjaro when we went on our Tanzania mission trip. And there were times on that mountain, literally, where one of us was ready to give up because it was just too hard. And then the other one would be, no, like, we're almost there. Like, we got to keep going. You can do this, you know? And so it's kind of that team effort of like, if and when one of us feels like, well, we can't really do this, the other one is there saying, yes, we can, and this is how, or, you know, we need other people helping, or, you know, let's pray or trust that it's going to be okay. I mean, but I don't know. That's my answer, my short answer. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely lean on each other a lot. I know Simone wouldn't be in the restaurant business if, you know, if I wasn't, and I wouldn't be doing music like I am now if it wasn't for Simone, and I wouldn't be able to raise all the money we need to raise to do what we do without Simone either. So we definitely rely on each other, and there's confidence. There's confidence in that. I just kind of, in certain ways in life, I just have this blind idealism, you know, and like Simone said, if it's not important with a capital I, I'm not really interested in it. That's just kind of how I'm wired, I guess. So
I'm gonna kick myself because now I can't remember what the book is, but there's a book that we read in another job. We read it as a staff, and I remember like the mantra of this book was, everything is always working out for me. And obviously that's not always true. There are things in our lives that negatively impact us, but for the most part, like the thing that you are supposed to do in this book is every time that something good happens, think that thought, and you start to realize how many good things are actually happening in your life. And I mean, you look at some of the things that you guys have done. I mean, you left a job that you loved doing fundraising or, you know, nonprofit. That came back around. That worked out for you. You guys moved to New York and made a crazy move, but Simone was able to establish her music career, and you were able to go to culinary school. That worked out for you. You moved back to Omaha and started a cafe that has a menu with no prices. That's insane, and it worked out for you. Like, you have just continued to step out in faith and do it together time after time after time, and it's worked out for you. It's really an incredible story, and we're only scratching the surface of it. So you talked a little bit, Matt, a little while ago about how you got inspired by the same cafe out in Colorado. It's one thing to look at that business model and be like, oh, that's pretty cool, and that ties together some of our passions and our talents. It's a whole nother thing to be like, that's it. That's what I want to do. What was it about that cafe and that model that inspired you to be like, I think this is my calling in life?
Well, part of it was I knew I really liked working in restaurants. It was fun. I didn't get to do it for a very before Table Grace Cafe. I didn't have a ton of restaurant experience. Like, I know there's a lot of chefs in town that have really made their rounds in the community and even got their education locally, and have been working in restaurants here since they were kids. And I didn't start out that way. I didn't really have food service experience as a kid. But once I got into it, from being in chef school, I really loved working in restaurant kitchens. It was just really, really fun. I liked the community. So that was great. Doing it for the entertainment value wasn't speaking to my heart. And I just knew that I need something else, something more. And so hearing about this place that was a restaurant, but also a nonprofit and also something with a mission that served everyone in the community, that was like the best of both worlds. And you can still do really good, really high quality food and serve everybody, and do it with high ideals and high morals and all of that, like all in one package. And so it was a little of everything, and in the fact that, again, same cafe had a proven track record and a really solid business model to follow. It just all worked out. And I knew, like, once, and Simone kind of tells this probably possibly even better than I do, but when we started the cafe, again, with not much money in the bank, and we signed our lease with OHA, Omaha Housing Authority manages the Farnham building where our cafe is, and kind of having to pitch this idea to them worked out pretty well because they're also a nonprofit on a much different, larger scale than we are, but pitching that idea to them and then starting with a really empty space. The retail spot we're in used to be a smoke shop, retail tobacco. I think it was called the Colonel's a while back. And so there was no kitchen infrastructure in that space at all. And we had to build everything from scratch. And we started with like a tabletop pizza oven that plugs into a regular outlet and pizza stones in there and like induction burners that plug into the wall. So hardly anything. There was a triple sink. That was great. There were basic things. There was a hand sink. There was a triple sink, but everything else we started really from scratch. And I had to work, night and day to get to get the cafe open. And we just leaned on our friends, people that were close to us, to do the work, the blood, sweat, and tears it took to get the cafe open. The sign that's up there was done by a friend, and it's remarkable how it came together. And someone in the process, it was actually Simone's brother, who's turning 50 this week, I think.
Yeah, this Sunday.
This Sunday. Mm-hmm. Happy birthday, Chris. But he said, sometimes you just have to jump and the net will appear. And that's kind of how it felt when we went through that process. And I said, well, I know I can trust Chris. And that sounds scary, but I trust Chris. So I'm going to jump. And I think the net will appear. And, yeah, it has. So
I'm going to save that one and use that on my wife sometime. I'm either going to get a really good laugh or she's just going to, again, stare at me like I'm a crazy person and put me in an asylum. So Table Grace has been around for about 15 years now, going back to 2011. And there are still a lot of people who are discovering it or learning about the mission. What was it like in those early months and even years of Table Grace Cafe, trying to get people to understand what it was that you were doing and the community that you were trying to create?
Well, I think because the music was part of the motivation for starting a nonprofit way back when, we were in Nashville and sitting in a workshop room a little bigger than this with artists who were actually hitting it big on the radio and stuff, for them to say to us that, if you're making music for a living and it affects people's lives with a gospel and message of love kind of thing, it'd be beneficial to you to incorporate as a nonprofit musician. So in the very beginning, we had this idea about the model being an opportunity for us to continue to go out there and teach and engage with people through the music. And so that all of these years gives us the opportunity to go and have conversations and inspire people with the mission. Because I think that definitely in the beginning, we had, like Matt said, a soft opening. So we were inviting, like by word of mouth, we were inviting people that we knew just to come and be there and experience it. We were flyering people around the neighborhood. But the concept of a pay what you can restaurant is very different. And so being able to kind of teach people ahead of time so they have the opportunity to take it in, think about it, and then decide to walk in the doors, has been one of our challenges, and also missions all along, is to really educate people about how it is a restaurant for everyone, and we need everybody in order to float the boat. I think one of the misconceptions early on, and that continues, is that if somebody with the money to pay for the meal comes in, they're actually taking a seat away from somebody who really needs the meal. And that's not our model. Like, we need everybody in those seats. We need people that are just going out to eat downtown to choose table grace every third time or something, to help float the boat. And so I think that basically is what I wanted to say. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I think we're still educating people about who we are and what we do every single day, because it's still not a concept that's everywhere. There's not a lot of community cafes out there. And because of where we are in the community downtown, in kind of a tourism corridor, I guess you could say, a lot of people that come in are just passing through town, and they really have no idea what they just walked into. So it's a good opportunity to share who we are and what we do and the concept and all of that. And people, even locals who maybe it's not practical for them to come to Table Grace because we just have that one location downtown, and the number one people like to say is why they don't come is parking's a challenge, and we get that. There is a streetcar coming, so hopefully that's a good thing.
Let's hope, yeah.
And so there's that, but we also have the ability to come to you. We have our catering service. We have our food truck, Mobile Grace food truck. So if you're out there and you want to experience Table Grace in your own neighborhood, think about us for catering and for food truck service as well.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say was, even though it was a soft opening, I feel like people learned about us quickly. And there was a reporter from Omaha World Herald that came and did an article on Table Grace within that first 6 months. And then, because we're right down the street from the courthouse, NBC Dateline was there covering a story, and they just wandered in. And I'm sitting there going, these folks are from somewhere either on the East Coast or the West Coast. And so I went right up to them and introduced myself, and it ended up that they did a story on Table Grace that went, national. And so it's those types of things where you just feel like this process and this mission is being affirmed by something beyond us, and that those doors continue to open, and we just faithfully step through, like keep on showing up and meeting the challenges and finding ways to work to the next day,
I know that you guys are very excited and proud of the Table Grace musical, and it's funny, Matt, you actually, when you guys were in New York, you heard one of Simone's original songs and you commented that could be a musical. And all these years later, it actually comes to fruition. So tell me about the idea. How did Table Grace the musical come to be?
Well, like you just said, one of the things I did in New York City was kind of the audition circuit, and I studied voice and started writing music, and I love musicals. We both do. And so we went to a lot of musicals on Broadway. And so when he said that, I thought, and I even said out loud, I think, well, if my music is ever going to be in a musical, I'm probably going to have to somehow co-write that and figure out what to write about and all of that. And so that was kind of in the back of my head for a number of years. And when I began going to Table Grace, probably, well, after we opened, because I was still full-time at the church at that time, and we had our 2 little girls and stuff, but I would still go down there at least once a week, I feel like, and started to experience what people were saying and how they were sharing about what Table Grace meant to them. And hearing some of those impact stories, I was like, this would be a really cool way to tell the story of Table Grace if I start interviewing people, get their permission to like kind of keep their stories and mold this into some sort of musical. So I did those interviews back in probably 2013, 2014, something like that, and kept this notebook that kind of just lived with me. Sometimes I would bury it, and then it would just sort of reemerge in my home office, and started working on some songs that particularly showcased the mission of Table Grace, like our song Table Grace Cafe that has our address in it, and was working on recording an album in 2015, and so I wrote some of the music around that time. But I kept like bumping up against, even though I've written a lot of music over the years, creating a story that could live on stage was something kind of beyond my wheelhouse. And so, I tried some things. I wrote some narratives and all of that. And then one time, our good friend, Matt's best friend from growing up and founding member of the board of directors of Table Grace Ministries, Jay Gish, was at our house, and I had said to our board that I was willing to put together one scene from this musical I kept talking about, but I didn't know how I was going to do that for our gala that year. And Jay was there and was like, well, I've written some plays before. Maybe let's like collaborate. And so I sent him everything that I had collected by that time, and he and I started co-writing the book, the storyline for the musical. And then over the years, it evolved in a lot of different ways. So it literally did take about 10 years from the time of starting to write that music to like the first scene that we did in 2017. And then we did a table read in 2018. And I just set myself goals like write a song every week, get people to give me feedback, write to the characters that we were creating. And then 2019, we did a stage reading where we actually had it at the B-Side Theater in Benson before the Benson Theater opened again. And we enlisted some local actors and singers, and it was a ticketed event and everything. Well, then the pandemic hit. And so everything just sort of stalled out, and it took another year or two before I was ready to hit the ground running again. And there were tons of setbacks with getting that thing to a fully staged production, but I feel like every setback offered a new opportunity to like engage with somebody else that was supposed to be part of the project and the process. And so like the rewrites, and this director didn't work out, and then that didn't work out, and then that one didn't work out, and then finally we found the one that was available and willing to work on this project with us and everything. So a labor of love for sure, but an opportunity as well to continue to shine light on the mission and impact of Table Grace, because just as we've spent, all this time talking about this, it's often hard to explain quickly what the mission and impact of Table Grace is. And so for people to come to the show and be immersed in it and have their own experiences of the transformation that happens and that can happen, and to walk out the door with a totally new understanding of the depth of what this mission is all about is the reason we did it, and that continues to live on. So you can go to tablegracethemusical.com and pay to download a video of one of the performances from the Loft Theater. You can also pay to download the music. And then there's a trailer for our documentary. So we had a documentary and a videographer kind of follow us through that whole process, Aaron Zavitz. And so he's got all this footage that we're working on putting together a documentary that at some point we'll play here in Omaha somewhere and send it out there so that people can experience that side of it too.
You mentioned, this was a decade-long process. You had all these setbacks. You had COVID, which basically put the project on hold from 2020 2020 to 2023 when you guys picked it back up. Mm-hmm. And then obviously you've experienced, like, all these stories that you're seeing on stage, you've experienced them. Mm-hmm. But I imagine it was to see all of them kind of play out at once. Like, just put me in you guys' seats as you're watching the musical, whether it's the first time or it's opening night or whatever it is. What were the emotions as you basically see your whole life, what you've spent the last decade plus creating, play out in one, like, orchestrated event? What was that like for you?
Well, I'll speak from someone who was in the show. So I played the character of Sarah, which is based on me. And so being the co-writer, the writer of all the music, kind of the visionary of getting this thing on stage, the day that we did our first full run through, which was in the basement of a church that we were rehearsing in, our daughters were part of the orchestra. So they were both playing violins in the string quartet. And then we had two little girls that were in the show that were essentially playing my daughters in the show. So it was like seeing mirror image, like our girls when they were younger at these different stages of development with Table Grace. And it was absolutely surreal. I mean, there were days when we were facing the setbacks that the only thing that kept me going was visualizing the bow sequence after our opening night, that I just knew that we were going to get to that point. I knew that we were going to finally get it on stage and have people there that were in the show and experiencing all of the stories. The other thing, though, too, like you said, it's all of these experiences in like a really compact, even though it's a 2-hour show, it's a really compact experience of just they're hitting you like left and right. And it was like reality on stage. And so you go to those places and the people, like you can identify who that character was representing, and the depth of their story and their pain and their triumph over whatever they were facing. And so it was just a really incredible moment as a human being, as a songwriter, as a co-creator of something like that, to be a part of that, to be in the midst of it, and to have so many talented people from Omaha, whether it was the director, the costume designer, the orchestrator of some of the songs that I wrote, or, the actors, the people that were drawn into the show to put their time and energy and talent into it. It was like the height of everybody's talent at that moment in time, being able to witness this creation explosion that was just incredible.
And from my perspective, it was like life imitating art, imitating life, right there in front of your eyes. Uh-huh. And some of the elements of that are our daughters were in the string group that accompanied the musical, the score. So they were up there on their violins as part of the show off to the side. But then there were two younger girls playing our daughters on stage. So it was like that was all happening. And then we had one of the characters based on one of our employees that was also in the show. So she was up there performing, not necessarily as that character, but she was up there, part of the show, singing and telling the story of Table Grace. And then one of the just amazing things was that she had this chronic illness that was kind of one of those things that was hard to pinpoint. And she was one of the amazing stories of people that came to Table Grace for the first time as a homeless patron, relied on us, went through her sobriety journey, went into recovery, was successful, maintained her sobriety, worked for us, kind of found her home and her career with us right up until the end of her life. And she got through that musical by some miracle, overcame all those health challenges, got through the last show, and then it wasn't too long after that she finally passed. And that was like this, probably one of the pinnacle moments of her life. And during that time, she reunited with one of her daughters, got to meet her newborn baby granddaughter. We got to be a part of all of that as well. And so the musical was just this this culminating celebration of everything that we've done. And like I said, art imitating life, imitating art, like right up there. And it was like, I don't know, a piece of heaven, I guess, just happening right there. It's one of those moments where you're like, wow, it's just like this bliss to experience. And at the Benson Theater, we also got to serve food. So we catered hors d'oeuvres along with the show. So people got to sit at dining tables and eat and be served by the Table Grace staff while they watched Table Grace the musical. So that was like even more of that whole, here we are, here's who we are, and here's the artistic version of us up there, and the music and the food and everything coming together all at once. It was just like, yeah, pretty cool.
I'm really glad that you guys got to experience that and kind of have that full circle moment. I shouldn't say full circle because it's still ongoing. The circle has not yet been completed, but it's very inspiring to see what you guys have created, the lives that you've touched, and the people that you'll continue to both inspire and empower. Like you said, not a handout, it's a hand up, and you're going to keep helping people. So if you're listening to this, maybe you need a meal and don't know where your next meal is coming from. Table Grace is here for you. Maybe you just want a good meal and you want to come in and meet some good people. Table Grace is where to go. So people get downtown, check it out. Really, really cool place. Obviously an amazing backstory, an amazing mission, and some amazing people behind it. Matt and Simone, thank you so much for giving us time on the podcast today.
It's a privilege.
Thank
Dan.
you for your invitation.
Of course. Omaha, as always, thanks for reading with us.